Hi, I'm Austin Wintory, and this is the Game Maker's Notebook. Today I am talking with a composer that I think needs absolutely no introduction to probably any listener, the great Grant Kirkhope. He has enjoyed a 30-year career in games, beginning with rare and eternal titles like GoldenEye 64, Banjo-Kazooie, later Viva Pinata, and many, many more. We talk at length about his journey from staff composer to freelance, and how he's managed to have incredible successes one after another with no real plan or foresight and just stumbling forward from one lucky opportunity into another. So it's a great chat. He's a wonderful guy, and I think you'll enjoy. Boy, I don't even know where to begin with this one. This has been a long time coming, certainly, and there's so much that we could discuss that it's almost intimidating in a way that I never feel. I usually have a pretty good sense of things I'd like to, unpack with someone. In your case, it's like, I think I need to turn you loose and just sit back and grab some popcorn and listen.
Listen to me swear and curse.
Yes, exactly.
And I feel like I feel like you've been through all of the composers, so you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel now, just to get to me right at the end, like the lowest of the lowest rung, kind of thing.
Yes, and I'm sure that's exactly what the listenership will feel as well. One of the most consistently, where
Average.
the hell is well done. How are you today? What room are you in? I feel like you're in an abandoned school.
No, I'm just in my house. It's just a bedroom in a house. That's all it is.
But it's like cables on the ground. This is an unfurnished room by the look of it.
Yes, it's just like me. It's just where I work. It's nothing fancy. It's just is it, I'm afraid.
I love it. We're getting a real taste of the real deal here.
Yeah, it's on my daughter's closet there. She uses that for extra clothes. She's got so many clothes, so I've had to close the door.
Well, I appreciate your indulging this invasive chance at a conversation. I feel like when we first met, you were at a fascinating turning point in your career, because we met and you were basically at the very beginning stages of freelancing.
Right.
Like that was a completely new frontier.
Yeah. In Baltimore, right? Washington, wasn't it? Washington we met, didn't we?
Yeah, MagFest.
Yeah.
You were at what's it called? Or
it was at that museum when they did the Journey thing, wasn't it? It was a museum, wasn't it? That's where we met the first time.
It was
my friend was there, the guy that did the filmmaker guy that from the forget his name.
Yeah, the Smithsonian was doing their Art of Games exhibition thing, and you were living around there. I'm blanking on the name of the studio.
Big Huge Games.
Big Huge Games.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, in Baltimore. Yeah.
Right. I would never have been able to remember that. So it was fascinating because you are one of these just, you are a man of legend. But in my mind, freelancing is so definitive of what composing is. I just rarely meet people that have any kind of staff experience, and yet you've made such crazy sort of immortal contributions to games from the role of staff position. Obviously I want to be a bit methodical here in a minute and kind of let you do the normal stuff of how you got into it and all that, just for the sake of anybody that might not know those stories. But I'm just curious to know what that feeling was like, because I remember you were trying to decide. You were saying, should I move to LA? What's your take on films versus games? I remember that was our first ever conversation, was that kind of stuff. How do you remember that little juncture feeling after so long as staff? Was that a positive transition? Were you sitting there going, "Oh my God"?
Well, no. I feel like that first chat we had in that restaurant in Washington. I remember saying to you those questions like, what's it like trying to get to LA and getting an agent and all that stuff. And I could see your face was just kind of going, "Oh, not another person who's trying to move to LA to be a composer." And you were trying to be polite and not say.
Was that your takeaway? It
felt like you were sort of looking at me going, "Grant, just don't do it. It's going to be a disaster," And I kind of felt like that.
Oh man, that's not how I felt.
No, but I felt like to kind of question when you're a freelance guy like you forever, but you must get asked like 10,000 times a day, right? People are saying, I'm going to move to LA and be a composer, and I was just another one of those people asking you.
Well, but that's exactly the thing. You were not just another one of those people, because most come without any kind of professional reputation to stand on, and you had about as hard the opposite of that as anyone I could possibly ever name.
I know, but like you say, it's often you find staff guys don't make the switch to freelance very well, right? It doesn't often work out for a lot of people, And so I was just naively going, "It's going to be great, it's going to be great," and I had no idea how if it was going to be great or not,
I remember Pete Anthony, the conductor and orchestrator, made the comment about the people that tend to get jobs as orchestrators, he called indoor cats, because their food is handed to them. Their hunting instincts have been thoroughly sort of softened by having all their luxuries all the time. Whereas composers tend to be outdoor cats. We want to hunt, tend to be a little skinnier as a result, and maybe a little raggedy and needing a shower. But that hunting instinct definitely kind of becomes more well honed. And I would think that he was drawing the distinction between those that pursue a career as an orchestrator or some other kind of supportive role relative to composers. But I think you could probably make a similar argument of the staff versus freelancer, where when you're used to 9 to 5 and assignments just being handed down, do you ever find yourself thinking, if I had an opportunity, if someone came knocking with it was really great company, would you jump at the chance? Or do you feel like, no, I've so thoroughly acclimated to freelance that I don't want to go back?
Yeah, I feel like it's a double-edged sword. That I feel like it's a thing where when you're a staff guy, you got a fixed wage coming in every month. You don't have to worry about that kind of stuff, But I think I really like freelancing because it can set your own hours. Like I'm going to show you the same. I know when I work best. I think that being a staff guy for years, I knew that I worked better early in the morning, like sort of 9 till 1 or 2. I'm all right. After that, I'm a bit tired and I'm not very good at it. So, but I've still got to sit there and do something. As opposed to when you're freelance, you can work 9 till 2 or whatever, and then come back later at night if I'm busy. But in the afternoon, I'm not great, so I'll go and do something else. So I think that's a really thing that I learned. But also, I feel like getting in that, what staff composing for me was really great it was got you that mantra of you start writing music at 8:45, 9 o'clock every day, and there's no writer's block. There's no waiting for the hand of the Lord to hand you a song in a darkened room. There's none of that. It's like it's got to get on with it. You can't sit there and just wait for the inspiration. So I really like that kind of mantra of just 8:45, 9 in the morning, you make a start. Whatever it is, you're right. If it's rubbish or not, you still do it right. So I like that. I like that kind of that thing. But equally, I like in the afternoons to go, I'm not great in the afternoons, so I'll do it later. So, and I just think.
Do you have that discipline now?
Yes, yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Never changed. I do it every day. I'm like you. I work every day, so I just do 7 days a week. Whatever I'm doing, kind of thing. So I feel like I like that thing. you know. And and also having kids, I've got to see the kids grow up a bit more. When you're doing 9 till 5, you're out of the house, especially living here, because you've got to travel an hour and a half in the morning and an hour and a half at night. You miss everything going on, don't you? So I feel like it's been really good for me. I mean, the kids are 21 and 17 now, so it's been good for me doing that to see them. And I do like setting my own hours.
You moved, it was 10-ish years ago, I think.
In 2012, so yeah.
So that means your kids were, what, 11 and 7, give or take.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a pretty pivotal age to make a big change like that. I was going to ask you about that as well, because that, I would think, the material difference just from a day-to-day life standpoint of being relatively inflexible Monday to Friday. But you also probably did not work weekends in general when you were staff, and probably always do now, right?
Yeah, only at crunch time, I think you used to do weekends at a staff company, because notoriously, what it's like when it's crunch time, you're kind of up against it, So, but I really feel like, honestly, I talk fast and I do everything fast, I write fast. So I've never really felt that massive crunch pressure because I always tend to get it done. I'm never behind. So it's not that I'm a great composer. It's just that everything I do it quickly. That's what I'm just doing ways to do it.
So if it's shit that's early.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's shit a bit quick.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we kind of dove in to what an outsider might see as a very kind of random and strange place to start. But I just find it fascinating because the only friends that I have that have real, true, extensive staff writer experience are still staff writers, like Darren Korb, for example.
Right.
And the vast majority I know never experienced it at all, like myself and most others. So that's where it's something I always am curious to ask more about, particularly because I feel bad that I gave you the impression that 10 years ago I was like, oh, dude, I wouldn't recommend it, because not at all. I like that you're here in LA, part of that community, and see you around at these events and that kind of stuff. I like that. I like that about the freelance world, because it becomes like a bit of a collective of fellow composers.
Yeah. I think I used to kind of shy away a little bit from doing events and stuff. I used to not bother, but I've kind of done, the last few years I've done a bit more, and I've got to say I really enjoy it. Like just been in Ghent with you a few weeks ago. I mean, I really enjoyed that. It was great fun. You get to meet lots of other people, and I always felt like meeting other composers is a bit of a waste of time. You're not going to get any work out of it, but I don't really think that's the issue. I think it's just like getting to be part of the community, right? And I think that it is important. And I think I'm much better at it than I used to be. Because I just like sitting here like and going nowhere. My wife says to me, you never leave the house, because I don't like to. But I'm getting better. So I do go out a bit
Unless I'm nominated for an award, then I will fly. Yeah, then I will fly across the ocean.
Yeah, I'll go for that. Yeah.
And the free alcohol.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, so all right, let's be a little bit diligent here. And why don't you give me? I know you've done a million interviews over the years, and I don't really think of these as interviews. This is just us shooting the shit.
Yeah.
But give me the kind of capsule summary of what led you into music professionally, and then of course how that would then lead to Rare, because that's of course where so many people are gonna, when I say Grant and they go, oh yeah, I've heard of him, and then I open up the door into their bedroom and I see an altar on the wall with little candles, your photo, and little homemade plushies with your face and all that, and I realize this is a very beloved figure. Obviously, that all really thoroughly began with the days at Rare. So walk me through just what led to that. What's the the quick and dirty version of that? Or it doesn't have to be quick, frankly.
Yeah. I guess I'm a bit like you. I just do normal things through school. I played recorder at 4 and trumpet at 6, and classically trained trumpet player. And I did started playing guitar about 12, 11. I was like a self-taught metal player, that's my thing. And then I ended up going to the Royal London College of Music in Manchester in the UK and did a 4-year degree in music. Trumpet my first study. I did pass, funnily enough. And then after that, 22, I left and just ended up playing in rock bands and stuff till I was 33. It's like 11 years. And then, and I was, I played in some bands that did well, some bands that did terribly. So I was played in some metal bands that had like little indie deals and didn't really get anywhere. And then I played trumpet in a big rock band called Little Angels in the UK, who had a number 1 album in the UK. We did like we support tours for like Van Halen and 6 weeks around Europe and Bon-Jovi 6 weeks. I mean, these giant arena tours, which were like amazing. Billy Idol and ZZ Top and Brad Adams and all these giant stars we supported, so it was great fun as a kind of 20-year-old doing that. It was great, but it came to an end about 32. It all kind of fell to pieces. I was back in playing in covers of bands in pubs in the UK, making £35 a night. I thought, this is going to be it for me. That's all I'm going to do.
Well, when you say it fell apart, was that some gradual kind of process, or did something happen that kind of exploded it?
Well, it's just bands just fall out, don't they? People just fall out, So the band literally just kind of fell out, and that was it.
It was very specifically that band.
Yeah.
In other words, I see.
They were the biggest band I played for. And I was just back to playing pub rock, And then, and also I had a mate called Robin Beanland, Robin, right? Who was he played in one of the local bands in Leeds. I live near Leeds. We played together in local bands. He said, I just got a job, playing in, writing music video games at a company called Rare. I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing, right? I thought, that's amazing, Like, no one that I knew got a job. Everyone that I knew was playing in bands on unemployment insurance. But I was on and off unemployment insurance for like 11 years, really,
Was there ever a motivation to go to somewhere like London and get a job with an orchestra? I mean, as a trumpet player, I would think that especially in the UK, there are so many performance venues beyond the band in the sort of pub world and that sort of thing. There's so much music. London alone, it's like 5 orchestras or more.
I know, but
was that never appealing, or were you're like, nah, I'm a fucking hard edge rock and roll.
Yeah, I want
badass.
I want to be playing a metal band. I want to be an Iron Maiden. I want to be in Judas Priest. That's what I wanted to do. That was always what I wanted to do. I had no interest in playing trumpet at all. When I left university, I was like, I didn't want to play it ever again, really. But I ended up playing in bands, that to make money, but I didn't want to do it.
Yeah, I
wanted to play guitar, So Robin got the job at Rare. He went off. He'd been there about a year and a half. Said to me, Grant, you've been on unemployment insurance about 11 years ish. Don't you think you should get a job? And I was like, well, what can I do? So, well, you could try do what I do. You could try write music video games. So I thought, well, I could have a go. So he recommended I bought an Atari ST with a Mega RAM, to run Cubase at the time, and a Pro Tools Effects synth module and bits and pieces, and just sat in my bedroom over the course of 1994 writing music that I thought was appropriate for video games. And I played a lot of games at the time. So, I was a big games player. And I sent 5 cassette tapes to Rare over the course of 94 and never got a reply, and then got a letter out the blue saying, please come for an interview. And Dave Wise interviewed me. And I got the job. I mean, no one was more surprised than I was. Plus the fact when I was at university, I was like, I was terrible at harmony. I failed the harmony exam 3 years out of 4. I only just passed it in the last year. I was terrible at it. So I never once thought about being a composer. It was never into my head. So it's complete fluke, really.
It's interesting. What do you chalk that up to? As somebody who, the running joke about your tritone bass lines and as somebody for whom harmony is not generic, when I listen to your stuff, especially in particular, obviously the banjo stuff, it's funny that was that just a slow arc for you, and now you feel very comfortable with that domain of it, or am I just seeing the flailings of somebody that keeps waiting to be found out?
Right, I think that's probably it. I don't know really. I feel like I always think if you've got a good ear, that's more important than anything. I do understand harmony. It's not like I don't, but I feel like the way they taught it at the Rolling Music, I wasn't great at understanding it. It was figured bass, and I kind of thought it was a waste of time because it kind of tells you what to write. It's write these numbers. It's like it's predisposed. Rather, I don't want to write what you're telling me to write. I want to write what I want to write.
Right.
And so I felt like like doing the Bach chorales and stuff that we used to study, in the for the exams and stuff. It's kind of I didn't find it really very informative, but I'd say that the College Orchestra rehearsed every Tuesday and Thursday morning from like 9 till 1. And I never missed that. Just sat in the audience in the empty hall on those 2 days for 4 years. And I felt like I learned more from doing that, listening to play Firebird and lots of cracking pieces that I never heard before, And I found that to be much more helpful to me. I also been a trumpet player and played in orchestras as a kid. So, when video games kind of made the jump from like sample-based stuff to like live orchestra,
right.
I didn't find that daunting because I'd sat in orchestras a million times. I knew exactly what it sounded like, And I feel like some composers can't make that jump because they don't understand it, So I feel like I found that more valuable than the actual teaching of harmony kind of thing. And when I got to mess up with the synth, and I could write 16 parts at once. It was like, oh my god, I can stick things together, and correct it when it's wrong. So I think that that was the kind of thing that I liked best of all. But I just was terrible at harmony. It really was.
How were you sort of survive that 1994 window where you said you were kind of building up essentially what sounds like a portfolio for purposes of a job application. First off, number one, I assume there were no other companies on your radar. It's not like you were submitting to a bunch of places in Rare. Obviously, there was the initial intro from Robin, but did it put that as a concept onto your radar widely enough that you thought I should look to see what else is available? Or was it just like, no, I'm just going to work on this and see if it works out with Rare?
That, like, I didn't know any of the companies there were other companies in the UK. I just didn't know about them. So I just blindly thought I need to just reply to Rare. And that's what I did. I sent those 5 cassette tapes off to them over that year.
How were you surviving during that year? Just the pub thing?
Yeah, I'm still doing that. Yeah, I still lived at home with my mother. So, at 33, living at home with your mother, it's quite old. So, I was there for that.
As your kids
absolutely
are 21, you're saying, now, if you're here 12 years from now, we have a conversation.
Exactly that. So, yeah, so I just, I don't think I don't really think about it. I just thought that I should just do that and I'd maybe get in eventually. I had no idea.
Did you have any sense of how much did you have your heart set on that? In other words, let's say that after a year of sending those tapes, they were like, nah. At what point would you go, I guess I need to do something different? Or were you starting to get really in love with the idea where it was like you become Rudy and go, I will sleep in your office lobby and I will do whatever it takes until you bring me on?
I think probably that. I think that I had no plan B. That was it. And I just blindly thought, I need to just work there. And also, Rare was right at that point, they'd just done DKC, the first Donkey Kong Country game, which was a massive success, right? I mean, there's huge success in the Spectrum days as Ultimate Play the game, But, but then when they switched to Rare, that made the headlines in the UK news. And the fact that Nintendo just bought just under half the company, that was on news at 10. It was that Nintendo never bought any Western developers, right? Ever invested anywhere. It was a revelation at the time, So I just thought, I need to work there. So I just had no idea, but I never thought about anything else or any other company. That was it.
Well, for the history of video game and the future of TikTok, we're all very happy that worked out the way it did.
That's right.
So walk me through those first few projects and just give a taste of what that was like, because as you say, on the back of Donkey Kong, Rare's sort of home run record is rather astonishing. I mean, it's hard to name any other company quite like it in the history of games. There's just this level of cultural impact, one after another after another.
Yes, it was kind of. I attribute that to the Stamper brothers, Giovanni, Tim and Chris Stamper. They had a real way about them that I really liked. Not everyone liked it, but I really did. And they were just so creative, and they're always in agreement, never arguing. They're always totally focused about how to make the right games. I really relished my time spent working there, and they were brilliant. But I mean, I first got that first day, and Dave Wise turned up and said, "You're doing the Game Boy, the original Game Boy," and I was like, "All right." So I had no idea what that entailed, and just said, "You need to convert Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy Kong's Quest from the SNES to work on the original. Just convert the tunes to work on to the Game Boy." Right? I was like, "Oh, that can't be that hard." But of course, I did it by ear. He said, "I'll give you MIDI files." I said, "No, I'll just work it up, by ear." But I didn't realize it's all done in hex, right? There's no MIDI files, no nothing. It was just a screen with black and white numbers on it. The first two numbers are the note, and the second two numbers are the length. You just write huge columns of notes.
Yeah.
Three monophonic channels on a noise channel. And that was it. And you had to get one note for the melody, one note to imply the harmony, one note for the bass, right? That was all you had. And I just was like, oh, this is ridiculously hard. I'm never going to do this. And I said to Robin, I rang him and said, look, I'm going to have to resign. It was the first day, so I just really can't do it. It's just way too hard for me. Because Dave was great at it, right? Dave did it a long time. He did the NES and the snares. He was great at all that stuff, And he said, look, don't be stupid. Get Dave back tomorrow and just write it down step by step. I was like, oh, that's a good idea. So I rang Dave the next day. I said, Dave, can you come back and just show me again? So it's like step 1, alt 4, step 2, whatever it was. Everything completely catalogued in like 25 steps to get one note into the Game Boy, whatever it was, or one chord, So, and then in the end of it, I quite enjoyed it. I actually, at the start, I was like, oh God, this is going to be terrible. But in the end of it, you try to get as much as you can out of it. And that, Game Boy can create that kind of fake delay reverb thing. And I thought it had a built-in reverb. It hasn't got that. You had to do that. You'd play a note and the next note, then you'd play the first note again quietly.
Yeah.
And it would sound like a doubling thing. Like it was like, oh, that's crazy. But it took a long time to program it. It took forever to get one bar in. But But so I quite enjoyed it. And then I've been there about, I don't know, a couple of months, and then Graham Norgate, who was working on GoldenEye and Blast Corps, and that Ken Griffey baseball on the Super NES. He said, I'm getting busy with those. You want to take over GoldenEye? I was like, of course I can. So at that point, I was agreed that I did Game Boy in the morning and GoldenEye in the afternoon. So nice.
Is that all that it was? Was it literally just, hey, do you want to work on this?
Yeah,
I mean, just out of curiosity, in terms of, you've got at least 3 composers, David and Robin and yourself.
And Evelyn. Evelyn was there. Evelyn Fisher. She was there too.
So, okay, so amongst 4 of you, theoretically all qualified to do it, I would think that working on a James Bond project would be a bit of a creme de la creme, like, oh, of course I want that. How is it that they, like, because you would have been the new guy, right? So
I was, yeah.
So what? How? I've never actually thought to ask you this. Like, how is it that they weren't all kind of saying, get in line, you'll have your turn in a few years? It would have been perfectly reasonable, I would think, that the new guy doesn't do this freaking plum gig. How you make it sound very nonchalant. I feel like I'm missing a detail or something.
When Dave said to me, after you finish the Game Boy, you're going to go to the Virtual Boy. It's got 6 channels then. I was like, oh, yeah, fantastic. But that kind of collapsed and it never did very well. So Robin was working on Killer Instinct 2 on the actual arcade machine. He was doing that on the machine. Evelyn was working on DK 3. Dave Wise was working on Dream, which became Banjo-Kazooie later. And then there was other games. So it was just like I was the one that was available, really. I had time to do it, So, and I'd also done the intro tune to GoldenEye. It's me playing guitar on that, right? So I'd done that already. I played the guitar parts anyway, and cut it up and stuck it in the machine, So yeah, he just said you can do it in the afternoons, and that so that was it. So it was literally just like that.
Did you then explain to them 9 to 1 is when I'm good, and the afternoons I'm really not up for it?
I know, it's like I was so excited to be there. I mean, to actually get paid. I never had a proper job in my life. I'd already been university and in bands. I never had any job at all, right? So, to actually get a job, you were getting paid to write music was like such an amazing thing. I was like, this is crazy. So I would have done anything. I don't care what it was, just to stay there,
But I feel like for anyone remotely under the, in the Commonwealth, but particularly, a British musician to work on James Bond, I mean, that's just, I can't imagine it like to go and just after 10 plus years playing in bands, go, okay, I guess I'll get a job. And then straight out of the gate, hey, you want to work on James Bond? It just seems like a level of lightning bolt that is insane.
It was it was crazy. And I feel like my entire time at Rare was like that. It was weird, to think that I ended up doing all those games. It was like, I don't know why, really. It was just a weird thing. And, like someone of my age, the James Bond movies were always the best movies of the year with the best effects and the best music and the best everything, right? As a kid growing up, so to get to that was amazing. I couldn't believe it, So
I've never asked you, have you ever had any sense have you ever had occasion, did you, when he was alive, have occasion to ever meet John Barry?
No, never. I wish I could have done. But I know the whole. We just found out later that Ray used to pay royalties back in the day, right? And so Monty Norman, I think it's all about 10 million copies to GoldenEye, and the royalty rate to the team was 17 cents a cartridge, but Monty Norman got 50 cents a cartridge, which we didn't know at the time. So he got like 5
He
million.
made more than Rare itself.
He got like 5 million quid to himself. Yeah, that was crazy. Dollars. So I didn't find out until much later.
Hell.
No, fantastic.
No wonder they don't like to use the James Bond theme in most of the other games since then.
I know, yeah. I think we were just told we could use anything. We could use the main theme that we could use that no matter what. So I was like, great, that's fantastic, And I feel like other games, like you say, probably didn't use it because of the cash.
Yeah, well, I remember Richard Jakes talking about that on the Bloodstone game, where it was an original Bond property that had Daniel Craig and suddenly blank Judi Dench, but it could sound like Bond, but it could not actually quote the theme. It could get like really close, but there was a legal like that note is one too many kind of stuff. And
I wonder about that.
Yeah, it could be that Rare was the cautionary tale that it was like, sorry, children, there will be no bonuses this year. But Monty Norman, meanwhile, is throwing a Christmas party for the entirety of London. That's
Yeah.
insane. I don't think I knew that. That is, did John Barry get zero in the, like, because I know that there's always been this kind of back and forth legal drama on them, and that, you know, from any kind of author, like what's on paper, I suppose it would credit Monty Norman. But I would think that by the time you reach the end, John Barry's got to be collecting something.
I don't think he did. Like, you know, that whole legal battle between Monty Norman and John Barry, I mean, it went for years, but John Barry lost, right? And it's clearly obvious that where Monty Norman's tune finishes and John Barry begins, like the whole jazz bit at the end is clearly John Barry, and the first part's that kind of, because he had that original demo of Monty Norman's, right? That kind of Indian sounding sitar music, you know. I mean, you know, so it's obvious, but Monty Norman would never give in, never give in, and so he just said, no, it's all mine, and that was the way it was. So he got all of it, yeah.
Isn't it fascinating that, like, you know, John Barry then, meanwhile, continues on and works on the franchise, and it's just so, like, all of them all sound so utterly him. The fact that he could lose that lawsuit was always baffling. But either way, yeah, it is all, I guess, down to that little boom, ba-da-bum, boom, 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 boom thing. But either way, so what's been your, again, I know this is stuff we've talked about, so forgive me for actually sounding a bit interviewish, but it just needs to be recorded for posterity, because for those listening, they need to pause the recording and go on YouTube or on TikTok or whatever and look up the various GoldenEye 64 pause gags. How's that been to just see subsequent sort of generations essentially discover it, and especially discover it like that? You know, you're one of the few true memed it's like you and Hans Zimmer and Johnny Williams, I think, are the only memed composers in this way. You know, how has that process been? Do you find, is that fun, or do you find yourself going, my God, you know, that it's you know, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. How has that rediscovery been?
No, you know, I think that if you get known for anything, right? I mean, one of the talks you were in at Ghent was about being typecast, right, and being like pigeonholed. And I mean, I feel like, you know, you said you talked to somebody who said, I'm glad I'm pigeonholed. It's like, and I feel like sometimes I don't really mind that, because, you know, as a composer or artist of any persuasion, if you're known for anything came out of your head that somebody else likes, I always find that amazing, right? So just the fact that if I'm known for that only on the Donkey Kong rap, you know, for instance, you know, like, then
we'll get to that.
Yeah, but then so be it. It's like, I mean, I feel like, you know, to be remembered for anything in this day and age, I think it's incredible. So, and that's been one of those amazing things. I mean, you know, the fact that the LA Lakers play it, you know, at the end of the match when they're dribbling the ball out on TV, like that's incredible to me. You know, the fact that people get it and all that, you know, so I don't mind it. I think it's great. But, you know, I mean, people said, oh, Grant Kirkhope, he's the godfather of trap music. And I don't even know what trap music is. Like, it's bizarre that, you know, it's like that whole hi-hatty thing. And that's like, I didn't know what I was doing. I just thought I need to write a Paul's music tune. It's going to take 15 minutes to write it, stick it in the game, forget about it. I mean, who cares about Paul's music tune, right? You don't bother, do you? So, I mean, you know, it's one of those things like, and now that'll be on my tombstone. Here lies Grant Kirkhope. He wrote the GoldenEye pause, watch music and the Donkey Kong rap, and that's it. No one cares about anything else, right?
Actually, on your tombstone, it should just say DK Rat, but not have your name.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Lies. The person that wrote the DK rap lies here. Whoever it was. Yeah.
Exactly. That would be the ultimate. Yeah, we'll get to that in a sec, because that was a crazy thing. But yeah, one thing also that I remember watching. I think it was some YouTube video where they were trying to work out the source of these sounds and the samples, and like particularly the like metal, you know, sort of pipe hit sound.
Yeah.
Just that level of dissection. It's amazing. I just think it's so endlessly endearing and wonderful. And like you said, when something gets under people's skin to such a degree that all these years later, I mean, I have a friend who maybe 4 or 5 years ago said, hey, you want to come over, you know, crack open a bottle of whiskey and we'll hang? So I go over to their house, have a whiskey, and he's like, okay, and now? And he goes, fires up GoldenEye 64, hands me a controller. It's on. And it was like, I just love it. It was so tight. It's like, this is 20 years old now. I found that I was nowhere near as good at it as I had been 20 years earlier. I was awful. but it's just the fact that, it still holds such a place in people's hearts. I love the framing of it that, okay, in the mornings you got to work on this, but in the afternoons you get to work on GoldenEye. Just that there's a humility to that. How long was the overall turnaround?
A long time. So we were supposed to come out at the same time as the movie ran. I think it made it out nearly at the point in the next movie. It was so late, so behind time, and it was full of bugs. And we thought it was one of those points is just get it out and forget about it. It's going to be a disaster. Like everyone just generally thought it's going to be a complete mess. It's one of those weird games where it wasn't one of the, games come out now and go a big speak, a spike and then go down, don't they, like that, kind of. Now, the GoldenEye was a constant grower, it just grew and grew and grew and grew. In fact, the second year it sold more than the first year, and the third year it sold more than the second and first year combined, which is crazy for a game.
God.
Yeah,
that's almost unheard of.
The stats are amazing. Yeah. So, crazy.
Do you have, like, when you were talking about sequencing on the Game Boy, relative to working on the N64, because I actually don't know much about what the sort of hardware specs were like for writing music because I know that the few times I've worked on hardware that was remotely similar, it was mostly about drive size, because once you got out of the real-time synthesis and it was all about how many voices you could support, the big challenge was the music has to just fit within like a 5 megabyte footprint on the drive or that kind of thing, stuff that we don't generally have to worry about now. I've had a little taste of that. Do you remember any of that kind of those kinds of extraneous challenges? Because I find it fascinating that the artistry of it and just the creativity and the impact it's had has so thoroughly survived that any sense of, we really had to pull a rabbit out of a hat with it, no one seems to talk about. Is there something noteworthy to it that you remember in that way, or was it?
I remember all of that in detail. I mean, it was a real challenge to try and. GoldenEye was in 1 megabit for the entire game. It was tiny. So for the audio, we had to compress MIDI files because MIDI files are tiny. We had to still compress those. We had to. If you had a drum pattern and a MIDI file,
heard of compressed MIDI.
Yeah, if you had a drum pattern that was a bar long that lasted 14 bars, rather than write out dunk, dunk, whatever it was for the 14 bars, you'd write one bar of it and put a little mark at either side of it, so it'd loop and you give it a number and say play that 14. Imagine what you're saving in like 13 bars of like a few notes. It's hardly anything, right? It's just bits, isn't it? But we had to do that to make it and then compress it on top of that. We had to loop cymbals because like cymbals couldn't be the decay is too long, right? So you'd get you'd hit the smash, and then you'd find a loop point somewhere just after the initial attack, and it'd be going like that. And then you put an envelope on it, so it'd go like that, which is awful, right? And all the samples, there was nothing above 16 kilohertz. So we'd sample a one clarinet note, a C3. That would be it. You'd find a loop point somewhere, and you can loop it around, and you'd put that in the machine, and you'd resample it at 16 kilohertz probably from 44. And that would be the one clarinet note you could use for so you play when it was high, it was Mickey Mouse. When it was low, it was whoa, 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 like that. So, dreadful stuff. That's why I feel like, how does anybody think it even sounds any good these days? Because, the things we had to do were just unbelievable. It was like, we used to have that old program called Zoom Edit, which is an old kind of sample editor years ago, a bit like that SoundForge. And it just had this top boost function. So we'd get the sample in from 44 kilohertz to 16, and then hit top boost loads of times to try and make it a bit brighter, and then stick it in the N64 and play it. But the thing I think Rare did differently was that we could hook the PC up to the N64 dev kit that sat inside the Silicon graphics machine, and we could play the actual samples on the cartridge, as opposed to write a piece of music that sounded amazing and then try to convert it to sound to work in the machine. But we'd play the actual samples in the machine, so. You knew things that sounded bad there, that sounds bad there, I won't use that. That's why
it's hard to imagine working any other way.
Yeah, but I guess people think I'm a massive marimba fan. It's only because the sample was really small and it sounded good at every range. So I used it all the time, right? So I used it everywhere because it's like, this sounds great no matter where you play it. So, so. So
it's funny because I always think composers working in 2023 have it so easy by comparison. But you were also, it's not like you were a garage programmer, computer nerd that laterally shifted into the video game world. You were a gigging musician. So
Right.
those must have felt like massive handcuffs because you were used to, oh no, if I want to play a note for 14 seconds long, the limitation is the size of my lungs or, the endurance of my wrists, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Did you find it frustrating or did you find it an interesting challenge? It's just such it's such a big shift from so-called proper, live acoustic music.
I mean, I really hate that phrase, think outside the box, but that's what you had to do. You had to kind of go, how am I going to make this sound even remotely decent? So you'd reuse samples. Like, I did all the sound design and the music on Banjo-Kazooie. So I'd end up using banjo samples for like Clank of the Whale is just banjo samples slowed down in pitch. So, because it didn't cost any more memory because the sample was already in there. You just play it a lower pitch, right? So you'd start doing stuff like that. And the fact that gong sound in GoldenEye that everyone talks about, I found Eric Serra used it on the soundtrack a lot, right, for the GoldenEye soundtrack. And I heard, but I found it in my synth completely by accident. It was just either Proteus Effects synth, and I thought that's the sound he's used. And it was like it's just a splash cymbal or something slowed right down. So you could just put in that kind of super high short noise and take it right down, and you had the GoldenEye gong noise, whatever it's called, So you just had to be a bit more. But I've got to say, Austin, I do feel like a lot of the composers that I know that worked back then, know how to write a good tune because it's all you had. You just had a decent set of chords and a melody, and that was it. You'd know one finger on a keyboard that sounds amazing like it does now. So I kind of feel like it's a good talent to have to be forced to learn, and also rare. We're massive Nintendo fans, so we got totally told all the time, listen to Mario, he does that tune a million times, you don't get bored of it. You have to do that, and that's quite daunting. Someone said to you, how am I going to do that? I don't know how to do that. So I feel like.
I'll press you again because all of that is sort of a description of how you achieved it. But I guess the question is, when you were in the midst of it, did you actually enjoy those challenges, or was it a frustrating, my goal is just to make it pass muster? Or it's like, did you like when GoldenEye was done, did you look at it and go, honestly, pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good about this. Like, I think that sounds good, actually, despite all these compromises that you have to make relative to if you were just making a record.
Yeah, no, I think I did think that. I think that it was enjoyable because you started to try and, learn little tricks to make things sound better or to work better. So I think we all of us did that. Like and if someone found something good, they'd tell the rest of us. So if we did this, this worked, and we do that kind of thing. So, Graham was very techie. So he was great at helping out with lots of bits and pieces. But it's like trying to get programmer time. They don't want to give you, they haven't got time to give you the programmer time. So you have to go and work things up for yourself. I remember when the N64 turned up, it had that kind of Mario bathroomy type reverb that came with it, right? And that was it. That's all you had. And so we didn't like that. So you just had a big table of coefficients and just lots of numbers. There's no depth and that you used to on a reverb nowadays. So me and Graham Norgate just sat there and randomly changed numbers until we thought it sounded better. And because we had no idea. So it distorted quite a bit actually, but it got fixed later by a programmer. But the early games just used that reverb that we messed around until it sounded all right, So
from there, what was Perfect Dark? The immediate what came next in the queue?
So I think it was Dream, right? So it was Dream, then that turned into Banjo-Kazooie. So that's what happened there. And me and Dave did Dream together for a little while, and then Dave got taken off to go to what became Diddy Kong Racing, and I got given Banjo-Kazooie to myself. So I remember Tim Stamper seen me one night and said, Grant, Banjo-Kazooie is entirely yours. Can I swear? Am I allowed to swear or not?
You're allowed to say whatever the fuck you want.
He just said, don't fuck it up. And that was the boss of the company, right? I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. I had to do all the sound effects, all the music. So the first time it was the whole thing, right? So, because generally rare, people got a game each. You have to do all the music, all the effects. That's like when we all got a game each. So it was Banjo-Kazooie, then it went into Donkey Kong 64, Banjo-Tooie, Perfect Dark. I did Banjo-Tooie and Donkey Kong 64 and Perfect Dark in the same time. Because Graham Norgate quit to go and do Free Radical and work on the Time Splitters games. And he was doing Perfect Dark and Jet Force Gemini. Robin got given Jet Force Gemini, and they gave me Perfect Dark on top of Donkey Kong and Banjo-Tooie. So. And
how long a span was that all happening?
I guess, I don't know, a couple of years, maybe a year and a half, something like that. Yeah. It was quite a lot. It was quite a heavy workload at that time.
And at the time, were you imagining that someday someone's going to name her dog after what we're doing here today?
You mean Alana Pierce, you mean?
Yes, indeed.
Yes. I don't. No, I didn't think that. I mean, you know what it's like. I mean, back in the day, I didn't think anybody cared about it after 6 weeks. Never mind 6 months. You know, it's like you think it's going to be out, and also
that's still true.
Yeah, there's no internet, is there? There was very little internet. You know, you had to wait for the magazines to review the games. You wait a whole month for the reviews to come in. You had no idea if people liked it or not. And also, Rare was a very sort of clandestine company. They never did any interviews. They never talked to anybody. They used to always say, "We're not pop stars. We make the games. The games are the talking. That's it." So no one
did letters or anything like that ever come? Did you ever get, or did anybody ever? I mean, I know that concerts of video games were still a long ways off, but did anybody ever kind of reach out to you to pull at that thread and just see what they could find, whether that's just
never.
A fan letter or something else?
No, if they did, Rare kept them from us, so I never got them. So it never happened like that. No, they were super secretive. The Stamper family are just by nature very secretive in their own personal lives, but it bled to the company. It was just that complete. It's a building in the middle of nowhere. It's all that's in Twycross is like a pub and a private school and a zoo and a tractor repair place. That's it. Nothing there.
So what would have been the first projects where you started recording live and doing things that were a lot closer to kind of your training, your initial training and professional experiences before all this chapter began?
That's Viva Pinata. Yeah, Viva Pinata.
Yes. That was...
At that point, Rare hired Steve Burke and another composer, Dave Clinic, and Steve Burke had worked for... what's his name? He does the Warner Brothers cartoons in the UK. Is it Cliff something? I forgot his name.
I don't know.
He's quite a well-known composer, and I know that George Callis used to work for him. He used to work for him too, and Steve Burke. Steve Burke got hired at Rare, so Steve had done some orchestral stuff before. So he was doing a game called Cameo, and that's the first time Rare used live orchestra. And then Viva Pinata was next. So,
and that was like 2000. What?
I think 6-ish, 5 or 6. When I started that movie, around there somewhere.
Because that was nominated for a BAFTA, if memory serves.
It was, yeah.
And so that's an interesting turn, because now that obviously means, the reach has expanded. I don't remember what year the BAFTA started recognizing game music, but it couldn't have been much earlier than that.
I think it might have been a year before that. It was right at the start of it. It was, I think, very close. Yeah.
Remind me where that was recorded?
Prague. The City of Prague's Philharmonic, Smacky Studios there. And
there was, and what, I assume that was not something you had to kind of advocate for. Like you said, the prior game they also had done. So was it just sort of assumed, we're going to go ahead with this? Or did you have to kind of lobby and say, hey, this is worth doing?
No, there was no question about it. It was all completely fine. I never had any trouble with the budget at all. It was just like, Microsoft had bought the company by that point. They said, we'll pay whatever it is, we'll pay for it. So that was that. So.
Well, that must be nice.
Well, no, yeah. I mean, I wish I'd got that now, but then it was like, no, it's all fine. So it all worked out great. I mean, I sort of said to them, I said, when we're recording, I said, this is a very sort of classical music sound, ish sounding game. I said, this could probably be played on Radio 3 because Radio 3 in the UK is a classical channel, right? And I said, they didn't play video game music ever. I said, well, this could maybe do it, So this could probably be something that could be one of the first kind of thing. And they're like, oh, well, we don't know, but. So I kind of got them to push it a little bit. I think it ended up getting here and there,
Wow.
So
how did it feel for you? Well, sorry, finish your thought.
No, that was it. I just kind of felt like it was like I felt like it sounded different to what I'd written before, put it that way. Because I'm a big sort of Vaughan Williams, Elgar fan, and I like that kind of archetypal English music that sounds very much like that kind of style. Not that I can write like that because they're gods, but I mean, I kind of felt like that was my attempt at that kind of thing. So I really tried. It was like me going, I used to love playing Vaughan Williams 5 and Enigma Variations back in the day on trumpet, So it was me trying to do that thing where I could use some of that in this,
Yeah, actually kind of tapping into what I was going to ask is just how that experience felt doing something where there's obviously a lot that goes into preparing for sessions, all the orchestration, all the recording prep, even just all the logistics of click tracks or how you're all it's set how it's all set up, just the pragmatics, how you get parts on the stands. And especially for younger composers that haven't done that before, it's a massive lift. It's just a huge boulder to get up the hill, and there's a million places where it can go wrong. And how did it feel after having spent, because 2005 or so, give or take, when
somewhere.
you'd been working 10 years living entirely in the box, right?
Yeah, it must have been, about that, yeah.
So, I mean, were you nervous going? I mean, I feel like it's, even though you had the background from 10 years plus early before, and you had, Royal College music, all that kind of stuff. It had been a while, and anybody who doesn't practice that skill, I mean, I feel like if I go 6 months between sessions, I don't remember what I'm doing. I'm like, I have no idea how any of this works. And so I'm it's to put myself in that headspace of, we can now record, and to imagine stepping in. I mean, did it go smoothly? Do you remember feeling like, this is a shit show to get out the door?
I think it's just like, I just blindly joined Rare and just blindly got on with it. And I just feel like that was the same thing. I just went, I just had to send out the MIDI files. Nick Rain did the orchestration, and Nick he'd done Bond movies, right? Stuff for Zimmer and all that. So Nick's a great guy, and James Fitzpatrick is the fixer over there. He was at the time, and so I'd been to the sessions for cameos. I kind of got friendly with those two. And we got along like a house on fire. I really got along with James and Nick are really great guys. We have a really good rapport and a good laugh, And so it went flawlessly. It was just, I don't think I just knew what I was doing. I was like, I can't be that hard. Just MP3, MIDI file to Nick. But also I feel like, you must be the same as this. Like, I think sometimes when composers are preparing stuff for orchestra, they don't really know anything about it. And I feel like I knew, to do things, a score order and separate apart, all that kind of stuff that I think that most composers maybe don't know. So when Nick got my MIDI files, I was like, well, it's practically done. I've only got, he might rearrange a couple of, I used to have muddy bassoons apparently. I used to have two many low notes in the bassoons, just do a compound chord and all that kind of stuff. Right. So I feel like it's things that I didn't think about. But I mean, apart from that, it's just pretty easy. All stuff just kind of really just works as it is because I'm just used to doing it, and I knew what it looked like anyway. So,
well, but that's the thing. You speak about it as if it's something we could take for granted, but it's, anytime you go 10 years without doing a thing, your mind is focused on other stuff, especially because what you were focused on was so technically different from that. Just what it takes to get things, like you said, all the programming needs to, make that clarinet sample last longer than a fraction of a second. That sort of thing is just such a different headspace to enter, that to pivot back, even if it had been where you came from on some level many years earlier, I find it astonishing. I think what it means is it just reaffirms that when everybody hails thy Lord Kirkhope, that you actually really are quite brilliant, because you make it sound honestly, man, you make it sound so nonchalant to pivot into, but not anybody could just do that, even if they had the background in it. After that many years away from it, it's like if you spend every day driving and then you just don't get in a car for 10 years, and then I go, okay, by the way, I need you to enter a race. That's kind of what it's like. At least that's what it seems like to me. I find it very impressive.
But I feel like that point, Gigacido just happened, right? So that was just about there then. About 2000, I feel like 2004-ish, it kind of turned up. And so we were using the big Vienna library. That was the one that everyone got, the big cube at the time. Everyone got that massive cube, and Rare had lots of money, so they could buy lots of copies for everybody, So you got to actually have a proper sampled flute, with a streaming flute on, that could run, so you could write proper parts and not worry about having a crap clarinet, because you had a proper, even though the samples were good, but they weren't great compared to these days. But it was doable to, and I'd already used that library for the Grab by the Ghoulies game. So that was, we were going to orchestrate that, but in the end we decided not to. I was nearly at the end, there wasn't enough time. So I feel like, it's a bit like me going, I remember sitting in an orchestra and maybe it's great to write proper parts and proper stuff for everything, So but I have to say, it's just my blindly stumbling into things and think it's going to be all right. And, and it just happened to be all right at that time. I feel like I'm just a bit like that. So,
Fair enough. Well, so how much longer were you at Rare after was like, because I this is where the years all start to get very mixed up for me. So what followed Viva Pinata, and walk me through the kind of next steps?
So it was like Viva Pinata, and then it was like Viva Pinata 2 and Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. And then I left 2008. I didn't finish Nuts and Bolts. I got to July. I think the game came out. We recorded the orchestra stuff for that and Viva Pinata 2 in Prague again, both of those times. And then I quit and left at that point, 2008.
And walk through that decision. I mean, that's, 14 years, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, I suppose me and my wife, right, we weren't married then. We used to always vacation in the US, right? We used to love coming to America. We used to come to LA and do the tour to Vegas and all that. On that, we did that every time we got a vacation. We used to come to America. We used to love it. We used to go, wouldn't it be cool if we actually got to, she was my wife then actually. We got married in 2000. Yeah, so I should get that right. So
okay, we can always edit these after.
Yeah. That's right. Don't tell her that. So I always thought, would it be cool to go to America? But never really thinking that it would happen. And one of my friends left Rare, Mike Currington, went to work at Rockstar in San Diego doing the what turned into Red Dead Redemption. It had another game. It was called something else, but it's called Agent before that. It was a weird kind of secret agent game. He said, I went to interview there twice and didn't get the job either time. And then also there was a small Konami in Oahu in Hawaii, and we were like, so I tried to get a job there. I thought, wouldn't it be great? I know I'm a Game Boy student. I thought, you could live in Hawaii and work on the Game Boy. Wouldn't it be amazing? So didn't get that either. And then so I used to kind of half-heartedly apply for jobs now and then in America, but not really took it seriously. So
it was solely to move. It wasn't that you were unhappy at Rare. It was
I wasn't happy. I didn't like the way it went. It changed for me at that point. And after I left, it went straight to Connect Sports. I would have hated that. So so
there was a wind, like the direction of the wind changing was not gelling with you.
So and then there's a job at Big Cheese Games came up, and I flew up to get the interview. They offered me the job. I thought, let's do it. So me and the wife decided, until we actually say yes, don't worry about it. So we had two small kids who were like 6 and 2 or something like that at the time, or 5 and 2. So we just sold up and moved over, So, and I think you don't really get how difficult that is until you actually do it. I can't even believe we did it now. Looking back, I think, my God, how did we do that? Pack it into a shipping container. But we didn't sell the house, so we had to leave it there and move across here with the house not sold and all that stuff that goes on, new schools, finding an apartment to live in, no credit score when you get here, so you can't get credit cards or anything. All that stuff that you don't think about,
Yeah, that crazy. I never even thought about.
Yeah, I had no idea that existed. I don't think the credit scores in the UK never happened, right? I never heard of it. Like we got here, it's like no credit score, no nothing. I couldn't get anything.
So wait, just pragmatically, how on earth did you even get on your feet?
That's right. So I had to go to Bank of America and say, I'll put £1,000 of my own money in the bank, and you give me a credit card on that £1,000. And when after a year, after using my credit card, spending my own money, they made the credit card a real credit card. It took a year to do that. I couldn't get a loan for a car. They were offering me, I guess at the time interest rates were like 6-7% for a car. And because I knew they offered me 25% interest rate on a loan for a car.
Jesus.
I had to get the boss from the company to co-sign the loan to get a car. I just had no idea. It's one of those things that I just blindly did with no idea how
Sounds
hard
like that's been that's like the recurring motif at every step of this thing, that, you just blindly I'll figure it out.
I know. I think I would say my career's been a bit like a fortunate set of disasters, because it really has.
It's like following a pinball, moving through a pinball machine.
It is like that.
Sometimes it just randomly lands on the right bumper and shoots over here and 10,000 points, and you haven't yet.
I've been at Big Cheese Games like 3-4 months, and THQ, who owned them, decided to close the studio. I've only been here in Baltimore 4 months. I was like, oh. And I realized that being on a visa, if they close the studio, I get 10 days, I'm out of the country. So I was ringing Ray going, can I come back? Can I go back? No.
Yeah, so wait, what happened with it? Because obviously there was that big story of, what was the name of
Kurt Schilling. Yeah, Kurt Schilling.
Kurt Schilling, yeah. There was
baseball player.
It was a huge kind of scandal in game industry that all this was so badly managed, or that was embezzled or something like that, and money just kind of disappeared. And because I do remember you being impacted. That ultimately is what, you lost the job because of that, right?
Totally.
And I remember there were a lot of stories of people who had relocated homes and stuff. And I didn't realize how long were you? What was the total time?
4 years was that?
Okay, so okay, yeah, it was because there were some people, they what made the news was some people were moved house a month earlier, and relocated for the sake of that job, just random other folks at the company.
Yeah, but there was a really weird thing happened. So Providence and Rhode Island offered Kurt like $75 million to move the company from Maynard up in Boston down to Providence, right? And so rather than have a brain and say, let's just get a tatty venue, and just get in there, get working. It had got this big 6-floor building, completely tarted it up to it was fantastic, great like that. And people have houses and mortgages up in Maynard. So tell you what, we'll take over paying your mortgage, and then you can get a new house down in Providence, right? But what actually happened was they didn't pay the mortgages. So people had moved houses to the new place, and then we're getting bills going, why aren't you paying your mortgage? What do you mean? We sold the house to the company. No, you didn't. And so there was like another incident. A woman was in labour. She was giving birth, and the healthcare ran out like that, actually in the delivery room in the hospital. It was absolutely dreadful.
And you didn't move though.
No, because so his company was in Maynard, right? And when THQ were going to try to sell Big Huge Games, it was going to close it. It's because it's bigger than 50 people. They've got that warn notice, which means you have to give 60 days before you can close it, something like that. So Valve came to look at us, and so did somebody else. I forget now. But then Kurt stepped in and bought the company off THQ. We're all saved. It was all going to be great, right? So, but then of course that all went wrong. So we're back in the same boat again, just after releasing Kingdom of Amalur, which did really well. So, Big Huge Games, the game was profitable, but Kurt's part of it wasn't at all.
I see.
Yeah, and so that's when Valve came to see us then, tried to buy us, and also so did 2K. But because there was that, we were tied to Kurt's demise, they couldn't see a way to get the company out from underneath him without some kind of massive entanglement. So just let us go. So it all just came to he just died.
So after 4 years, and Kingdom of Amalur is the only title that shipped while you were there, right? That was the only, another big sort of bravado orchestral score.
Well, I tried. Tried my best.
Obviously this is one of those things that we've talked about, and I reiterate it for the sake of a listener, so it's not just two pals shooting the shit, but because that's something that's very close to you. That's, despite playing in bands and despite spending so long focused on making, chip tunes come off, you really see yourself as an orchestral composer to the core. Yeah. And it's amazing. You've had so many great experiences in which to really flex that. That was the last one, I guess, as a staff composer. So then now we reach the moment where our paths are crossing, because that game would have just come out. Yeah. And you were, how did it not, just bouncing off of what you were talking about a minute ago, how did you not find yourself in some kind of visa hot shit with the collapse of the company? And because to go freelance, it's not such an easy thing if you're not a citizen or a permanent green card holder or something like that.
Yeah. So like after the first round of THQ try to sell the company, I thought that I need to try and find a way to be here a bit longer. So I bumped into one of my son's friends. It was a Chinese guy who worked in the government in Washington, and we were chatting about one day at one of these kids' party events. I told him I was on an O1 visa. It's 3 years, and you have to renew it every year after that, providing you got an employer. He said, "Well, are you going to go for the green card?" I said, "Well, I don't think so." I said, "I've got plenty of mates living over here who had been in the green card queue for like 7 years. Like it takes forever, to get through that thing." He said, "Well, I think because you're on the O1, that's that aliens of extraordinary ability thing. That." He said, "I think you meet the same criteria for the EB1A green card." I was like, "Oh, I've never heard of that." So I looked into it, and I went to see an immigration lawyer. He said, "It's that thing. It's like 10 criteria. It's like proof of earnings or awards, or there's like if you can fulfill 3 of them, then you're eligible to go for the." It's the O1 equivalent in the green card thing. So, so I thought, I'll have a go at it. I think, I said, I'll have a go at that, thinking to myself, well, I'm going to cover myself if it all goes wrong again, which I thought it might. So, so the immigration lawyer said, yeah, I think you got a good shot at it. I could produce, Rare paid good royalties back then. I could produce a sheet of royalties that's quite a lot of money. And also, a bit like yourself, you can type your name into the internet, you get loads of articles about yourself, so I could present that to the guy in the cubicle, and also the BAFTA nomination that helped, and that. So I feel that I got some letters from peers like Tony Tallarico, Greg O'Connor-Reed, people that could talk about my career, that could say, yeah,
Danny Baranowski.
Yeah, of course, Danny Warowski, of course, yeah, Jimmy Hinson, yeah. So I mean, so put it all together and sent it into the thing, and I got the green card in like 3 months. It was crazy.
Wow.
It normally takes years. I couldn't believe it. I was just
You
shocked.
citizen now? Or did at some point you? Did
Yeah,
at some point
so
you?
we kind of thought we'd be citizens for the kids, right? Because at the time the UK was still part of the EU, right? So I thought if I get an American passport and a British passport, they can more or less work anywhere in the world practically.
Right.
So of course the UK since left the EU, so it's a bit of a pain in the ass, But yeah, so that's why we did the citizen thing, So, but I like being a citizen. I like it. I mean, I can vote now. Couldn't vote before, and I can't. I've been a citizen maybe 4 or 5 years. I could vote in the last election, the last general.
Yeah, I know that process can take forever. I have friends that live in the US for like 15 years and then finally go, okay, I just got it.
Yeah. So we just felt like doing it. So, so I think it's good.
So, all right. What then was that tipping point? Kind of now we're at where our conversation began in this Grant timeline, the Grant cinematic universe.
That's right.
What you did not decide to chase a staff position after everything you've said for the last hour.
Right.
It actually seems like I'm actually more impressed than I was just hearing all this again. Some things in here I'm hearing for the first time. I'm amazed you didn't go look for another staff job. It really feels like you had, despite how things went with big, huge games, and the whole Kurt Schilling and all that craziness. Despite that, you've had some pretty excellent experiences overall, it seems, just the kinds of work you were able to do, the quality of the games, that the fact that there's so many games that, are so beloved. I would have thought it made you go, I just got to go find another one of those. I've got a pretty good track record now. Like, why did you just decide, you know what? I want to go be in LA and shift gears entirely.
Well, I think I had another fortunate disaster. Well, it was a bit like, just as the whole Big Huge Games thing imploded, I had a friend of mine, Jeremy, I've got his second name, Taylor. God, I can't believe that. He's a good friend. I can't believe. Anyway, he was a sound guy I knew in Harrogate in North Yorkshire where I lived, and he went to work for Sega Australia. He was, he's been, and he was working on Mickey Mouse Cast of Illusion converting it to the iPad. And he said, he said, do you want to do that? So just at that point when it all went wrong, he popped up with an offer of something to do. I was like, God, this is just popped up at the right time, just like unironically, like my life is, So I did that, and then also because some of the guys from Big Huge Games had gone to Firaxis, because that's right there in Hunt Valley, right in Baltimore. I knew a lot of those guys, and they asked me to do Civilization as well. So that came at the same time. And then that Christmas, I got an email from one of the guys at Ubisoft Milan talking about a game they wanted me to do, which turned into Mario Rabbids, right? So kind of all this by complete fluke, ended up getting those. And I couldn't have done those things if it had been a staff composer. I wouldn't have the time to do it, So I did that. Just popped up completely out of the blue, and that was just complete luck. So that was it. That sort of kicked it off. But
Mario Rabbids, what year did that appear? When did they first reach out, and how long were you attached to it? Because that.
Yes, right. Yes, so that was like 20. I think that was like Christmas 2014.
Yeah, because I distinctly remember you and I messaging where you were like, I think I might be the first non-Japanese composer to contribute to the Mario franchise. Like, I think that was kind of a big deal.
Yeah. It was 2014. So I think the Civilization thing and the Mickey Mouse thing popped up before that. So about 2012.
But you were already in LA by that point. So so something made you go, I think I can have a shot at that. Like it's just, I guess I don't know why I'm bothering asking, because every time I ask you this stuff, you're like, I don't know. I just point myself forward and go.
I think my wife, because we liked LA and the climate and all the rest of it, wouldn't it be great to kind of live there? So my wife was like, we should just go and do it. And I was a bit like, we had some money in the bank. It's about, living in LA. That's not going to last very long, So we should just go, and it's going to be fine. And so we just did it, and that you got on a plane and did it. And it was just luck, I guess, that it just turned out all right. It could have been a disaster. But also she's a teacher. So when the kids got a bit older, she started to do a little bit of supply teaching. at the local schools. And then I tell you what, I really missed it. I'm going to get my accreditation from the UK and then start teaching full time. So that obviously helped, So she did that. So that was just because she felt like the kids were just down the street at the local elementary. She got a job there. It was brilliant. So she said, I'm really liking it. I think I might. And she taught up to high school in the UK. She's a science teacher. And she said, I never teach the young kids, but she ended up working at elementary school. She said, I really like teaching the little kids. It's good fun. So that, she did that as well. So it just, it is that bizarre thing, Austin, where it's just been a little bit of fortunate stuff's happened.
Yeah, I was going to say, for any young composers that are sitting here, with their pad and their pen ready to take down career notes, it's like, just stumble forward and have everything work out. There's the advice.
It's easy. Yeah, it's just easy.
It's like Seinfeld, where Jerry there's a great episode where he keeps talking about how everything always works out for him, because it's like he's talking to Elaine and George, and Elaine's having the worst day of her life. George is having the best day. So for me, everything remains nice and even. And it's like, I'm good. I don't mind that you're in hell. I'm okay. That seems to be how the Grant Kirkhope story.
It hasn't all been like absolute, fluffy clouds and great stuff. Lots of things have gone wrong. Don't get me wrong, but I think the whole getting to LA bit worked out all right. That worked out all right. But now
we've had a chance to work on films as well. Which would have been completely impossible under the world of a staff composer.
Yeah, and I moved here for that reason. I wanted to try and get, try and do some movie stuff. I've always wanted to do that. It's still been a big thing for a long time. So, I was lucky to get that Pierce Brosnan thing, and I've done a few indies now. But you've done a gazillion films. I haven't done that many, So, but
but you did a movie with James Bond, and you're the fucking GoldenEye composer. So I feel like
I know how did that work out? I know. And also, when the first house we lived in Agora Hills, the lady who lived opposite was Pierce Brosnan's PA, which is I just thought, everywhere I go, it's Pierce Brosnan.
I actually saw him once. He lives on Kauai.
Right.
And I took a family trip there 10-ish years ago, and we we're just driving down the street, and I was like, I would put money that I just saw Pierce Brosnan just standing there on the street corner. So I got out my phone, I Googled, and it was like, yeah, he lives here. And I was like, There's no fucking way that was not him. I swear to God, we just saw him.
Right.
I guess I didn't prove it, but I'm pretty convinced because we were on the part of Kauai that he lives in.
Right.
So yeah, that's the closest I can come to the Grant Kirkhope coolness.
No, we had that thing where after we did GoldenEye, Nintendo wanted us to do, Ian wanted to do the next game. Is it The World's Not Enough? I forgot the next one. Was it the one
Tomorrow Never Dies.
Elliot Carver. So so they invited us. They invited the team down to see some filming of GoldenEye, and they invited us down to watch some filming of that. And we went down for the day to the whatever it is, Pinewood, whatever it is, kind of thing. And we got wandering about. It's great to see it. But it was that scene where he's on the motorbike on the side. And he's got the Japanese Chinese girl on the back, or Japanese lady on the back of the bike. Yeah. And he's sliding down. And it's like you see things in movies getting filmed. It's just so not what it looks like on the movie. He was on this kind of bike. It had like a trolley, and there's some guys pulling the rope to pull him along the ground. And the helicopter gets lowered in on a crane. It's just an empty shell. It's just nothing in it, no doors, no windows. And they CG the guys in, and they CG that. And then he has to throw the rope into the rotor blades and jump into the well. It's just, all cardboard and just, It's kind of, it kind of ruined it for me, really,
Oh, see, I always thought it was cool. I always thought what they managed to pull off.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Given that it isn't, anything like how it looks on through that lens, I find it pretty incredible. But
no, I mean, it's just amazing. It's just like I didn't expect it to be like that. It was just. And that the skyscraper, they jump off and hold onto the poster with it as they fall down.
Oh, yeah, ripping the face in half.
Yeah, that wasn't that big,
Yeah, of course. That's too funny.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we got to say hello to him and say, he won't remember, but hello, Pierce, how you doing, kind of thing.
That's great. Well, I love that it does feel validated to have come to LA and pursue that whole thing. And then obviously, you managed to snag a World Soundtrack Award nomination a couple years ago for film music. And then
bizarrely enough.
And then again this year there with the Mario Rabbids again or the what's the full name of it again?
Sparks of Hope.
Sparks of Hope. Yep, with Gareth and Yoko Shimomura. It was a cool. I feel like for a lot of gamers out there, that's essentially the most dream team trio of composers one could possibly fathom. So yeah, I guess one thing that I'm curious to unpack is you have a very unique perspective to be able to really see the evolution of the industry over a solidly. I mean, you said 1994.
Yeah, ish. Yeah,
next year's nice big milestone anniversary.
Oh God, yeah, I know.
I think it's amazing. For example, I've been in the industry a little bit more than half that amount of time. I joined about the time. In fact, Flow, my first real game, came out the same year, I'm pretty sure, as Viva Pinata, or 1 year after.
Right.
Because that was a very big kind of game at the time. I remember that was sort of where it started for me. So I look at it and I go, I've been doing this about maybe 16 to 18 years, depending on where exactly you kind of draw the line on which project I kind of go, well, I guess that's now quasi-professional level work or whatever. But you have effectively double that amount of window to look at. What is your perspective on the industry? How much it's changed? Another question I'm very curious. It's kind of a blunt question, but do you think it's a better industry today than it felt for you at the time, or do you have much of an opinion on that sort of thing?
So I like back at Rare, like it was a family-run company, right? And that was it. There was no corporate overlord looking over you to trying to change things with focus groups and all that stuff. It's just like you have a chat in the morning, do it by the afternoon. We'll do this, let's do this. And making GoldenEye, no one on the team had made a game before. Like nobody had. So literally you put the game together going, I think this is all right. What do you think of it? I think and that was the way it went, right? There was no producery thing going, it should be like this or whatever. So I miss that part of it. And I think the indie sector, like the indie people have got that about them still, where it's just like, hey, let's make a game in 6 months, and 6 years later they're still making it, but they make it, and they make what they want. You know what I mean? They make what they want, right? And I kind of feel like that kind of open corporatization of it all, where it's very focus group tested, and it's sometimes a bit watered down because you try to please everybody, so everyone likes it a bit, but no one loves it, And I sometimes feel that's a bit of a mistake. So I like that. I do like a one-man band at the top to kind of go, this is my vision. This is how it's going to be. You live and die by it. And if the game comes out, it's terrible. Fair enough. But if it comes out, it's got that real focus to it.
Right.
But I feel like working for my Rabbids guys in Milan, like Davide Soliani, who's the creative director there. He's a super nice guy. We're good friends. I really like him a lot. But he's very, very focused. He's got that kind of thing. I know just how it needs to be, And so I like that. Sometimes you can miss that in that big corporate structure sometimes. It gets a bit lost and watered down. So, and also I think musically, we talked about this in Ghent a little bit. He taught me to that whole, I like that very traditional orchestral thing like you do. And I sometimes feel like, who wants to hear that right now? And I still believe is there still a market for it? Is it going to be all different like the guy who writes the White Lotus? Is it going to be like that? Is that where we're heading towards? Is it like, where's it going? Because there's an awful lot of, I feel like that epic soundtrack has been done to death a gazillion times now. It's everywhere. Everything you go to, certainly in games orchestra, it's a big epic soundtrack. And I guess if a few guys can write good tunes still, I can make it stick. But there's an awful lot of stuff that's very massive and very big, but very unremarkable. You don't remember it. So that's the thing I don't like about it. I feel like to write some giant orchestral thing these days, I don't think that's hard. But to write something that's memorable is hard. And I think that's the difference for me. I think that, does anybody really care? I'm in that state, not a crossroads, but I'm at that point I'm thinking, do people really care about that? And I know we talked about that in Ghent, and we're both, I just don't know anymore. Because when something sticks out that's really good, people really flock to it. Like the Baldur's Gate 3 thing, everyone's loving that, to
that question, that's a pretty traditional orchestral score.
Yeah, and because he's a man that knows what he's doing, right? And so
he does know how to write a tune as well.
Yeah,
he totally. Very much has that.
Yeah, so maybe that is still there. I feel like more in movies probably. I feel like there's less of that going on. I feel like games is still like one of the last bastions of in melody in some respects, that it's still there.
Certainly live action kind of traditional like Hollywood blockbusters or things like that. You're probably more right than not. But for example, I went to the SCL screening the other night of this new Illumination animated film Migration that John Powell did. And it was even under the banner of John Powell, it was a very traditional orchestral score. Even a lot of the kind of weird, interesting experimental things that he often will sneak in there with odd instruments or kind of crazy samples that he develops. It was actually pretty straightforward. And the film, it was dubbed with that big lush statements front and center the whole time. And obviously we can't ever use a single film as representative of the state of the art more broadly, but it's hard for me to see that something that has managed to stay pretty evergreen for the 100-odd years that film has existed, for example, and especially once the technology allowed for actual orchestral writing and not just things emulating or trying to evoke orchestral writing in games, it immediately became part of the scene as well. So it's hard for me. I get what you're saying, and there's always those flash in the pan novelties, like you mentioned, White Lotus, that come along. But it's like what happens is 5 more things are going to come out that imitate that, and then everyone's going to go, yeah, that's all. That
Yeah.
we've done that now. So then someone else will come along and do a thing that's weird and unique and interesting, and that'll become the new thing everybody's copying. But in the background of all of that, orchestral music, I think, endures. At least that seems to be my point of view. It's my perhaps idealistic or optimistic on my part, maybe even naive, but I don't know. You have a real natural flair for it in a way that not a lot of folks do, and you obviously have a lot of practical experience doing it as well, and that I think also materially makes a difference. So it does seem, to the extent that you call it a crossroads, it doesn't seem like it needs to be a reckoning.
Yeah, no, and I still feel like certain things are always going to want to be an orchestral soundtrack, like a Harry Potter or a magical thing. It's it's generally going to be an orchestral soundtrack, and some things are going to be a synthy soundtrack just because by nature of what they are, right? So you're always going to get that stuff. It's just that sometimes when they get the director saying to you, "I don't want any melodies here because it detracts from the scene," I'll be like, shouldn't you write a better scene if the melody's going to detract from the scene? Shouldn't the scene be a bit better? Obviously you can't say that, but you just get that thing where you don't hear too many ambient tracks at number 1 on the charts, right? If Lady Gaga's at number 1, she's probably in a good tune that you can whistle to work in the morning. I kind of feel like the average man or woman in the street still likes a good tune they can remember and hum to themselves when they're doing their work or whatever. So I still think that that is still a really valid thing. I think that the population at large think that. I'm not convinced the director role at large thinks that.
Have you had that battle on games of someone saying, can this be more ambient?
No. I've got to say, I feel like I just get, especially to the Mario games, Davide's like melody, everything all right. It has to be a melody, a hooky melody, So I feel like I've not really come across that. But it irks me when I go to the cinema and see something. I think, what a missed opportunity. Like the fact that I can't remember many of the Marvel theme tunes. I think that's such a gigantic thing. All I can remember is like Sylvester's, Avengers, the little motif, because it's memorable and it's got gravitas to it. And I like his scores to Endgame and, Infinity War. I can remember G.K. Spider-Man, but I can't remember very much else,
Ant-Man,
I feel like I should.
That's the best one.
I know you like that one, yeah. And I just can't remember it. But I love his orchestral writing to the WandaVision thing. I thought it was fantastic. It was a bit lush string writing in that last episode of WandaVision. It's really tugged at your heartstrings. I thought Crystal Beck did a great job of that, So I just think, it's just a missed opportunity for me. It doesn't have to be a lot. You can just, in Harry Potter, it's just da, 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 da. That's all you need, right? You don't need any more than that. Everyone knows what that is, etc. So I don't know.
You don't need any more than that, but in the case of John Williams, I will give you crap tons more than that.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's that thing where, I don't know. So it's just got me. I'm conscious of it now. I think before I just blindly write melody from wall to wall. I'm getting more conscious of it these days.
It's interesting though. That's why I was curious where that attitude was coming from. If it was I'm getting really sick of being asked to pare it back, or if it's more just observational on the films that you're seeing or games you might be playing or whatever, and thinking, you had a really great opportunity here. Why didn't you kind of go for the jugular more? It sounds like it's much more that it's your just as the consumer saying, "Oh, I'd love to see this more."
Yeah, I mean, and like when we get our pieces played at these concerts, that happen, it's a fantastic experience, and the audience go crazy, and it's such the video game concert stuff's brilliant these days. Like there's lots of people doing it; it's all over the place, and orchestras realise they can make money doing it. They can maybe play a video games concert this night, sell it out, make a lot of money, and then they can play maybe more experimental stuff for the next concert. Because the people, maybe the audience isn't as big for that, but it's important that it gets played. So. I think it's such a great thing for everybody. And the fact that people are taking it seriously, the fact it's on the proms, or it was a couple of years ago, Ema Noons as a concert, and you've done plenty of concerts yourself. I mean, I feel like all that stuff is like, it's really healthy for it. And I really genuinely believe that video games is the classical music of the future. I really believe that. Whether anyone else does, I don't know, but I believe that. I think in 100 years' time, we're looking back and going, oh, that Wintory and that Kirkhope guy, remember those guys back there? We're all dead and gone, I kind of feel like, I know they're the great video game composers that there are.
Look, it's true. I mean, we you're already seeing the John Williams and Bernard Herrmann sort of canonization happening pretty easily. I mean, it wouldn't strike anybody as shocking to go to a concert that's, we're going to play Stravinsky, but we're going to pair it with Close Encounters or something. That wouldn't actually be that big of a stretch anymore. Whereas not that long ago, it was, those are Pops concerts, and then there's proper repertoire, and we will not let them intermingle. Games are now the current frontier of the Pops concert world, but a lot of film music has already been kind of given the, we bless you as proper orchestral music. So,
and also I feel like you might coax people into the concert with some popular music, and then pair it with something that's really experimental they've not ever listened to, and go, oh well, I quite like some of that because I've been here for this piece, but
it's always
I've heard this now. So
it's either that, or it's just at worst case, or at minimum, it's sort of a diversification of the portfolio where they now have one audience that comes to this concert and one audience that comes to another concert, instead of just having the one audience that only came to hear Beethoven or something.
Yeah.
So then I want to circle back just a little bit to your comment about you miss that kind of homegrown feel, like when you were talking about those days at Rare, that you don't maybe feel as easily in the way things are going now. But you did make it sound like you did have a taste of that working on the Mario Rabbids team, where it wasn't quite so corporate overlordy, and it did harken back a bit to that era. It seems like it's not going to be exactly the same, but I imagine it had a taste of that.
Yeah, honestly, also, I've been super lucky. The people that I work with have all been, pretty let me do what I want to do, more or less, kind of thing. I mean, I think the civilization games just said, write something epic and hopeful, and that was like, you can't. That's fantastic, and that was about it. And when I did the stuff for Blizzard for Shadowlands, they were super nice too. Like, took my first idea most of the time. I mean, the Mario Rabbids stuff. Davide, on the first game, he was easier. He's got harder on the second game because he's just pushing me harder and harder for different stuff. But I feel like that's part of the course, really. And I don't mind that. It's nice to get to write some different stuff. He rightfully said we need to make the second game sound different to the first game. So hopefully it does. So and I feel like after working at Rare and being with those kind of super passionate teams, I really felt I'd never get that again. I thought I'm never going to get this experience again because that was a real one-off. But I feel like working with Ubisoft Milan, they really are that super passionate team. I feel like they've really worked their way up from doing Game Boy games to getting bigger and bigger and bigger and working on Just Dance and being a satellite studio and stuff, and then finally get their own shot in the Mario Rabbids games. And they did such a good job of that. And they're really super passionate Nintendo people. They really are.
Yeah.
So, it's worked out ever so well. And that, that's just an absolute fluke again that they asked me and didn't ask you or somebody else. It's just like.
Well, no, I don't think so. I mean.
No, but I mean, it's just, Austin, you're a very well-known composer, for God's sake. So I just think sometimes it's just down to a, eeny, meeny, miny, more, let's give him a go, Not just
Actually,
one that.
That reminds me of something else I meant to bring up. I appreciate how much time you're giving me, though. I don't want to steal your whole afternoon, but I did. You and I both came to a similar conclusion and released albums of our
yes.
our dustbin, as it were.
I know.
Yours is just called Rejected, I think.
Right, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yours cuts to the heart of the matter a bit more succinctly than mine did. Mine, I went for pretentious aspirations of a kind of artsy statement, and yours was like, nope, here's the shit.
Yeah, that's me, right? Isn't it? Yeah.
What are you in any real kind of position to be able to say the story on any of those, or are they kind of cloaked in mystery by design? Of
No, I can talk. No, I don't mind. So two of the tracks there. One was called Zombies in the Snow. One was called Wasteland. That was for Crash Bandicoot. So the last one was
right.
So I came second in that. Walter May got that one. There's one called House of Owls. It's this Owl House, that cartoon that's on Disney, I think it is. That one.
Owl House, yeah.
That one. One was called Frogs for Friends. That was for the Amphibia Land or Amphibia Disney cartoon show. Matt Braley's the director on that.
Are a lot of these film and TV stuff?
I think all of it, apart from the two Crash Bandicoot, are all like, because when I was at Go Face Thoughts, I tried to pitch for an awful lot of like Disney, DreamWorks cartoon stuff. I didn't get any of it, but I tried. And so, most of those are that kind of thing. I forget what else is on it now, but those are the ones I can remember.
I never realized that it was predominantly from film stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't games. Yeah, it was only the two for the Crash Bandicoot thing, I think.
It makes me realize that animated television seems like absolutely a slam dunk for everything that you were saying, because the other big thing that requires, that you mentioned at the start of the conversation, is speed.
Right.
People have to write. I talked to my friend, for example, Sherry Chung is a friend. I don't know if you know her, but she and I, her studio is not far from here. And she was saying, she does all these CW shows, was working on like Riverdale and Kung Fu. And, it's like she did that recent Netflix animated Gremlins show. And it was like, on a lot of these, especially the network stuff, it's like they send you the episode on Monday, you're spotting it Friday, that day, and you're dubbing Friday. It's like you're turning in 20, 30 plus minutes of music in a week.
Yeah, it's crazy,
and a lot of that, between the mixing and spotting and changes, most of that writing ends up landing on about a day or a day and a half. And it's
crazy,
just like you have to just have a level of precision that is mind-boggling. But you, from what you were saying, that's just, as long as it's before 1 o'clock. That's
I can write fast. I really can. Like if they send me something on the Monday, I'll have it back to them by the Tuesday. Usually, I'll have a new idea. I've written at least 30 seconds of whatever by, first 30 bars or something like that to get to the. It would be there that day, but because of 8 hours ahead of me, that kind of. It'll be the next day before they get it. But I can do it easy in the day. It might not be any good, but I can do it.
Well, you already established that. Do you still go out for those kinds of things? Like, is there a potential that, someday, a year or 2 or 5 or however long from now, you'll be deep in television land and people going, oh yeah, remember when Grant used to slum him here with the rest of us in games?
No, but I guess I'm like you. Like, I'd like to do it from mobile phones to movies, right? I want to do all of it. So I don't really care what that is. And I've always wanted to do, I'm that age where I'd love to do a big giant movie. It'd be great, right? Something, I've got to say, because I don't really know what goes on. So judging by some of the things that you hear about, some of those things can be brutal. And I guess it would be way more brutal than I'm used to. So I might not like it if I ever got it. But I feel like, right now I'm thinking it'd be great to do some TV stuff or the Star Trek show. I don't know. Like, all that stuff's great, right? I think like Stephen Bart's done a great job on Picard. I thought that Naomi Milliman's done a great job on Star Trek. Brady Worlds is a great thing. I feel like she's written the most Star Trek thing I've heard in a long time.
Strange New World. Yeah, I completely agree. She's crushed it on there. It's so musical. It's so it really feels like actual music. It's quite astonishing.
And also, she used that that's that famous look from the '60s show. I thought, if you use that, I'm sold. I feel like I think it's the most Star Trek thing I've heard in a long time. That's why.
Agreed.
So I'd love to do something like that.
So does that mean? Is there a kind of white whale for you? Is there like I guess you kind of already answered it just now, but I didn't really ask it in so pointed of a way. But is there kind of a if I just I'd love to do X, like for some people it's, oh, I've always wanted to do, some real poignant drama, or I always wanted to write metal with orchestra. You know what I mean? Like some people, some composers have kind of this very esoterically specific, I'm just waiting for the chance to write fill in the blank. Do you have anything like that?
Yeah, I think for me, like Harry Potter, or maybe something like Mission Impossible, or a big Marvel movie. That's what I really liked. I mean, Harry Potter especially. But also, I think, how can you do that without not using John Williams? I think it's not possible to do without John Williams tunes, right? You couldn't do it without it, I don't think. What about you? Surely you must have, what would be your thing you'd love to do more? What would be your right whale?
I mean, my most sort of the most accurate answer to that is it sounds horribly pretentious, but the thing that I always want to do is the thing that I don't know what it is until it's here. Right. In other words, I don't because the goal is always to push somewhere very kind of weird and feel like I'm doing things that I never even thought were possible, but it requires a kind of unusual game or unusual thing to kind of spark those thoughts, a couple years ago, this game, The Pathless, where recording, Tuvan throat singers and antiphonal horn ensembles and nickel harpa and like North African talking drums, and figuring out how to smash it all together somehow and not really knowing what it's going to be. That was not like a dream I had before it appeared, but while working on it, I was like, I'm having so much fun. I love how kind of, I don't have anything to really throw against the wall and go, oh, it kind of sounds like this or that, and that's my happy place. So it always feels like, the best, the white whale is the one that I wouldn't be able to identify in advance. That's the truest, most honest version of that. But I will say, I am a total diehard nerd for the Mass Effect franchise. And I do, I always make clear to anybody I talk to that's ever touched anything Mass Effect with a 10-foot pole. I've got my red Commander Shepard helmet. Sits permanently in the studio just as a love letter. I just love that franchise so much that would be an absolute kind of bucket list, just to know I've played in that sandbox a little bit, but it really is purely because I'm just such a fan of that franchise, and it feels big enough that I feel like I would have room in it. Because, for example, I remember after Journey came out, I was doing like an interview, and someone said, what would be, your favorite game you wish you had scored instead of like the score that's there or something. And I was like, that's such a weird question, because at the time I said, for example, BioShock, I think is one of the greatest games ever, truly. But Gary's music is so interwoven with why I love it that my fantasy is not to go back in time and replace him, because then it's almost by definition going down a notch as a game, because I love what he did, feels so perfect in the context of the game. So like my love of it entails preserving it how it is. So I never understood that idea of, oh, I wish I could go back and just, be John Williams instead and do Star Wars. So it's like, I'm not going to do a better job than John Williams did. So like, leave it how it is. But this is one where this is a sufficiently large sort of space opera franchise that is, I think, lends itself just enough to an eclecticism that I'm like, I think I could potentially find my little corner, have some fun in it, and not take away from it, potentially, if such an opportunity would ever arise. That's the only answer. But the truth is, like I said, I'm very happily working on things where we don't have anything to measure it against, because we're, and that I'm most grateful for at the end of the day. I'd rather take that any day if I had to choose, for sure.
Yeah. I guess I need to add to my list. I'd add Bond to the list. I'd like to do a Bond movie, but that'd be cool to do.
Well, you've got as good of a resume, leading up to it as anybody else in games.
If Barbara Broccoli's just tuning in right now, just Barbara, I'm your man.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love to hear but here would be the rule. You would have to use some of those samples.
Right. Oh,
You'd have to.
oh God. Can you imagine that? Yeah, bloody hell.
The
Have to
clarinet.
like a radio somewhere in the room, playing out in a room somewhere. They could do it like that on a bad mono speaker. That'd probably sound all right.
Why not? Why not?
Yeah, that'd be all right, I think.
Well, dude, I feel like I could do this all day, but you're being very generous with your time, and hopefully someone's going to come slide a meal for you under the door at some point.
Hopefully, so the wife.
You're in this room that you look like you're being held in more than. No, man, I really appreciate it. Like I said, these wide view looks at the industry are so valuable and so interesting to hear. I think particularly that idea that the way you were describing Rare in those days, the indie world really is the best place to find that.
Yeah,
and I hope that developers, especially if any non-composer developers listen to this, kind of hear that and think of it as a bit of a inspiration for just like a corporate cult, like their corporate's probably not even the wrong word, just their internal team culture.
Yeah.
To kind of feel like it's just us. Think of it as a family business, basically. Even if it's not literally.
When I think all the best programs at Rare when I was there were the guys that spent years in the bedroom, coding on the Spectrum, just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
They were the guys that wrote an assembler. They were the guys that wrote the best code because it wasn't pretty code, but it was super efficient. It was fast. It did the job. It wasn't pretty to look at. They're like, don't worry about it. It's just going to work, And then when they got all the uni guys coming in sometimes, they'd have like this kind of utopian perfect code that was slow. And, and it's like, you just have to, that whole indie culture, that like, that works, leave it alone. Yeah. I like that attitude.
Sort of street smart versus book smart.
Yeah, totally. I think, I think that the indie guys, I feel like they've got that. Like, when you go to the indie part of the GDC the first couple of days, like Danny said to me, you should come along, the great talks, I was like, all right, I'll go. And I love some of those talks. Some of the guys who, said, oh, we're making a game in 6 months and 6 years later, or, talk about Anti-Chamber, that I've got this guy, Alexander Bruce, all those guys, and hearing their story, how their life was devoted to the game. And then when it came out as a gigantic success, they didn't know what to do with themselves. They got lots of money. They didn't need to do anything else for the rest of their lives. And they kind of felt like they'd peaked at 22 or whatever, those crazy stories that you hear from these people. I felt like I really like that part of the GDC. It's great to watch the indie guys just talk about their woes and how it's gone and how they thought it was going to go, as opposed to how it did go. I think it's a great bit, that is, I think.
Yeah, I think one of my favorites in that, speaking of BioShock, Gary Scheinman and I sat together at Darren Korb's postmortem on Bastion after they put their first game out, and he was talking about, we recorded he goes, he was a rock producer. He was playing in bands. And then it was this kind of similar story to yours, except that it was like a high school friend who said, hey, I've started a thing. You should come help us out. So he's suddenly learning, F-mod and all these things that no rock producer had ever imagined that. And on top of that, sound and dialogue, he goes, we recorded Logan's dialogue in my closet in Brooklyn. And they shipped the entire game. This game that was, winning awards, and I'm with you. I love that spirit. That why can't we do it? What's stopping us?
It's that whole sort of 50s. Let's do the show right here. It's like that. You see on the old kind of musicals when the years gone by. Let's just do it here right now. It's going to be great. Yeah. And I think sometimes you can overcomplicate it. I remember farming out. I was an audio director on Kings of Amalur. I remember farming the dialogue out to a separate company, and they made such a disaster, a mess of the dialogue. I was like, it's not very hard. You just have to get a good mic, and a good, and it could be in a closet even, and just record this big, huge tool chain of like compressors and all this stuff, and it just sounded like ass, I was like, you don't really need to do that. It just needs to be natural, And I said to them, start right at the start of the waveform when you edit it. Leave a little bit of gap at the end for the natural reverberance of wherever you are to fall off. And they left a gap at the start and cut it dead at the end. So it was like, Jesus. It was just a disaster. Like and the guy said to me, I've got this great, I said, look, I don't really care what your tool chain, I'm not interested. As long as it sounds great, that's fine with me. And surely that's all that matters. If it sounds great, who cares what you did with it?
Yeah.
If you recorded it on your mobile phone, who cares if it sounds great? I don't care what, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
So I feel like when I started, that's what it was like. There was no rules, right? You just made it up as you went along.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. Well, I love that. Well, that seems to be the Grant Kirkhope motto, is making it up as you go along.
That's right, I think it is.
That was the recurring thread here in a way that I didn't even really anticipate. I mean, I know I've known you long enough to know that some kind of crazy master plan is not exactly how you operate, but I'm still kind of blown away the extent to which you've just sort of stumbled from one classic to another, one career milestone to another.
Me too.
And, and just your ability to, the industry has evolved a lot, and your ability to stay very, relevant and very sort of cherished member of the community is amazing, because, it's music is sort of a characteristically brutal field to stick in for more than a few years. At some point, we all seem to be just kind of kicked to the curb somehow, and you've defied that more than anybody.
I think you saying staying relevant, like Jimmy Hinton said to me, GDC when you said, Grant, you've somehow managed to stay relevant. And I was like, I really don't know how I managed it, but I think that's a really good phrase. I think staying relevant is super hard as a composer, because people forget about you in 10 minutes time. You get your big project out, and that's it. You've forgotten until you do another one, right? But
also just the changing times. The fact that you were sequencing on a Game Boy, and right. Like people really get comfortable in that groove, and then the walls get too high when things shift. Peter McConnell is one of the only other ones who's still actively writing great scores to this day, who started at an era where the technology was so different that it bears little resemblance. Like I'm lucky that I started kind of right when the shift happened. So right. I got these fleeting glimpses. Like I worked on a Nintendo DS game, for example. That was a fucking pain in the ass, because it was shipping MIDI files with custom samples and a lot of that stuff. And I hated it. But I only had to do that a time or two. Right. Some people did that stuff or similar or more difficult for 20 years or 15 years. Yeah, and then suddenly there's people recording orchestras and they don't know what to do with themselves. So I find it amazing.
No, I remember like doing when I first got to Rare, like, and do the Banjo-Kazooie game and try to get that channel fade thing working. I was pointed at the Monkey Island games, that whole iMuse system that they had going on with LucasArts. That was just amazing. Like the fact that when the music morphed as you wanted, right? It was magical. It was just amazing, on all with FN synthesis, and we had to try and make it work on the N64 by turning up channels and a MIDI file and all that kind of thing, and drawing things in the floor. When Banjo walked across the floor, it would trigger the crossfade, all that. I mean, like, that was just fun. It was just amazing. Like playing the Monkey Island games, even though it wasn't a lot going on, it was fun. What a great score to those games. Even back in the early days, like just fantastic stuff,
And a great tune.
Yeah,
a lot of
absolutely.
Like a pile of great tunes.
Yeah, fantastic stuff that was.
Well, thank you so much, man. I genuinely just could keep going forever. But I really appreciate you making the time and your patience. I know I kept poking you for like a year, going, "Hey, we got to do the Game Maker Notebook," not
as long as our lunch in LA, which has been 12 years.
God help me.
Yeah, it's only been 12. I've been trying to get you for lunch for 12 years, so I'm hoping that before I die, I manage to get you for lunch.
The problem is, this is where we all end up on our little silos. Where I used to live in New York City before I moved here, and I had a roommate, and we were really close. And then we, got distanced from living on opposite coasts, and just don't talk that often. And then like 9 years ago, something like that, he tells me, "Hey, I've gotten a job in LA. I'm moving. I'm going to be living in Venice." Well, I'm up in Burbank. He's down in Venice. I think I've seen him 3 times. This was someone I lived with. This was a guy who was one of my closest friends. We lived together for 2 years, but LA just has this unnatural ability to kind of make you live in your little. It's like you're stuck behind a moat, and you need permission to lower the bridge.
Yeah,
this is true. Me just trying to blame outside forces.
Exactly. It's not washing.
Yeah, I know. I can see you seeing right through me. You're like, yeah, okay. That the term you're looking for is a shitty friend.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm far too good-mannered to say that, but, I'll let you,
Oh, yeah,
I'll let
that's
you,
everyone associates you with decorum and sense
That's
of
right. I am the man with the,
very
absolute
polished. Yes, exactly. Well, at least we got to have some nice drinks in Ghent recently.
Yeah, it was great. I
And
really enjoyed that. It was great fun.
and
Yeah.
so, in any case, well, I thank you again. I have no concept for when this is coming out, but hopefully, is there anything that any exciting little thing you can leave us with that may or may not be public by the time this is aired?
No, unfortunately, there's nothing. I'm afraid. Yeah.
No.
I'm not doing much. I'm just some little indie bits and pieces at the moment. I'm doing another indie movie for the same director. That's about it at the moment.
Oh, that's exciting.
So I'm just chasing the next thing as we, I'm in that after I've just finished Mario Rabbids, so the DLC things. I'm in that kind of let's find another job, or I'm gonna get kicked out of the house and be on the street. So
all right. Well, so in that case, would be prospective employers listening to this. Grant is looking for work. He's available. This is like those artists on Instagram, open for commissions.
Yes, I'm open for that. Open for anything.
All right, so Barbara Broccoli has homework to do.
Yeah, that's right.
And everybody else apparently. So
yes,
good to know. Well, thank you, sir.
All right,
and we'll get that lunch.
Well, I believe I want to see it.